Welcome to the Nano podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of nano companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of nano publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. This week we have John Lai, the CEO of Petvivo, stock ticker PETV. Petvivo is a biomedical device company currently focused on manufacturing, commercializing, and licensing innovative medical devices and therapeutics for companion animals. John, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Will.
So I went kind of back into your LinkedIn, looked a little into your history to kind of see how you got to where you are today. First and foremost, can you tell me just a little bit about your time as CEO of Rover and what Rover did? Because it sounds like that's a winning business model, but you might have just been a little ahead of your time.
Yeah, so I have found out over the years, because my philosophy is always look for niche technologies that I believe was going to be the future, 3 to 5 years out. And there have been times, like you stated, I've been early. One of them was gas card, pay at the pump. Greatest concept ever, but they were using phone lines. And phone lines back then were $100 a phone line, and gas station owners could not afford to put in 4 or 8 phone lines on a monthly basis. So, that one didn't work because of that. But obviously the patents were bought by Visa, and they rolled it out successfully because of wireless radio modems and everything. And other companies, I was at the right time, like a company called Stratasys, which focused on rapid prototyping using a monofilament layering of plastic products or 3D imaging. So
another Minnesota company.
Downloading of software, Digital River online. I was early, but not too early, because as you recall, AOL, you got this downturn. You would spend 20 minutes trying to download the software, and then they boot you off and you have to start over. We were a little ahead, but it was in enough time frame where the DSL picked up, where they could start downloading, and that became a very successful company. So I stick with that theme, and that's how Petvivo fits into that theme, because we look at technologies that are quite innovative and disruptive to the industry, where we'll be able to bring what we feel is the next generation of healthcare or products to help improve the quality of life of our pets.
Yeah, that's what I was going to kind of get to, is that first starting with Rover, and then you worked in the oil and energy industry for a bit. And then tell me about kind of the day or the weeks of you're working in the oil and energy industry, but you start getting calls about this Petvivo company, or someone has this patent that they want to commercialize, or exactly kind of how did that phone call go down? What got you excited about the idea? How did that happen?
So that situation was very unique in the sense that the CEO was getting a divorce, and he needed help to liquidate the wells that were in the company. And that's what I did. I went in to help negotiate the transition out of that business and have his settlement with his ex-wife. So that was a really unique situation. I usually don't do that, but he was a friend of mine. And so I stepped in to help and got a real lesson on, if you're not from Louisiana and Texas, even if you hire attorneys, oil business is very tough and cutthroat, and they're not straight up. And because I'm used to, when you say something and you sign something, that's it.
Well, with the whole oil industry being based on artificial scarcity to make sure prices are high enough so that the pumps can actually run and all that, the whole thing is pretty opaque. So good luck in negotiating in that industry.
Yeah, we did really well. I sold oil at $110 a barrel, and then watched it drop to $25 a barrel. So the problem is everybody's balance sheet had 5-to-1 current coverage ratio, so you felt good selling to them on a payment basis. And then when oil drops, the banks pull all their credit lines because it's based on the reserves. That's how you value oil wells. And the company I sold it to, 25 years in business, never missed any payments, had tremendous cash reserves. But when it went down, all their oils went down, and the bank called it. And the CEO calls me up and goes, John, you can see I have enough money to keep paying, but I can't just pay off these loans overnight. And that's what happened. When oil dropped to $25 a barrel, because they based it on, they says you don't have enough coverage ratio. And that's kind of stupid to me when a bank does that, because 25 years of history, and they have the cash reserve to keep making the monthly payments.
Well, especially when we had during COVID time, I think it was negative $35 a barrel. And it's what, are you going to pull everyone's credit?
Yeah, but that was on the futures delivery. That wasn't the real world. Oh. Yeah. I mean, if you had contracts or, whatever, you had to pay somebody to take your oil.
Crazy. So tell me a bit more about how this kind of transitioned into Petvivo. You're helping out your friend, you're kind of wrapping that up, and then were you in the market and kind of looking around?
No.
Did they just contact you out of the blue, or how did this happen?
So because of my past successes and the ability to show how to commercialize and understanding what the future of technology or whatever product we're bringing, I stick with that niche form. Their law firm reached out to me and said, we have a company that's developed technologies. We have over 21 patents on a global basis. They receive $8 million in grant money from the Department of Defense and NIH, and the scientists and development of the science was at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. The scientists loved it. He just kept doing research because the government kept paying him to do research. So it was his ideal job, but he went out and took money from private investors, and the private investors have an expectation of some monetization. It's not just for him to keep doing research and having fun. So they threatened to sue him. They reached out to me and says, John, can you commercialize some of this? I looked at their data and I said, your data is actually too good. And they go, what do you mean too good? I said, you're changing therapies in the human side of the market. And I can explain to you that you're going to need $300 million in 5 years just to get the first doctors to change and try the product. And I said, if you're a doctor, you came out of med school, you practiced 20 years, you're used to your procedure. You introduce something new to them. That is very difficult to get the change, and it takes time. And we saw that with a local company like Medtronic when they came out with the pacemaker. It took them 5 years to get $1 million in adoption. And now it's a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Idenix is the same way. Blood Diagnostics, $22 billion franchise. It took them 5 years. So
was that kind of your insight? Because I looked through, it didn't look like you have a medical degree. But was that kind of your insight of being somewhere near kind of the got the Silicon Prairie or the MedTech kind of alley and having all these different business connections at Medtronic and stuff? Is that how you kind of pattern match to figure out that this needed a lot more capital than they had?
Well, I recognized the vision of what it takes to change consumption patterns and of no matter what, because that was the same way with Digital River. It took a little time, but it was, once the technology caught up, same with Stratasys, the rapid prototyping. Everybody was used to making a clay or a wood part take 6 months to a year to get a prototype. Here, it was a few days, you got a prototype, so those advantages are more easily recognizable, and it doesn't deal with people. When you're dealing with people, the doctors have a risk of getting sued if they're trying a new therapy and it goes wrong. You don't have that issues when you're dealing with hard objects. So I understood human nature. And that's one of the strengths I think I bring to everything, is that I understand how people, the buyers, the consumers would look at our product, which are the veterinary doctors. So I said, you have all this human data. Let me take it to the animal side, because one of the biggest things you were able to accomplish was in your clinical studies on the human side to get the FDA to declare these particles as a human medical device. So Spring, or the particles that we develop, is a protein particle matrix that mimics cartilage and tissue, but it has multiple uses in human therapeutics. But I said, since you have that designation as a human medical device, on the companion animal side of the FDA, you don't have to do any studies to be able to sell and market because you already did on the human side. So once we went that route, it was clear that we could bring product to market, prove it up in the animal side, and then eventually come back to the human side. So the first product we decided to launch was Spring with osteocushion technology. Now, we sell it to the veterinary doctors. The veterinary doctors inject it into the joint. And within the joint, the initial step is it forms a layer or a scaffold that provides cushion, because osteoarthritis is basically wearing away the cartilage. But the next thing that happens is over the next 2 weeks to 30 days, these particles migrate into the outer synovium and reinforces the outer synovium to have the proper joint function and have the proper fluid within the joint to keep the joint lubricated. So we're addressing the root cause of the problem, much longer term approach, and it allows the dog or the cat or the horse to function the joint properly. So it works really well in a multimodal approach for the veterinary doctors. They first, use a steroid or something like that to bring the inflammation down. And then we recommend injecting the particles. And that's how we're unique. We're the only company that addresses the root cause of the problem. Everyone else has been focused on getting a better pill with less side effects, but they're all basically masking the pain or bringing inflammation down. So it's really a short-term Band-Aid versus trying to create a solution that provides long-term relief.
So it's maybe an obvious stupid question, but so is it like injected via liquid and then it becomes semi-hard like cartilage while it sits inside the body over time and then the enzymes start coming out of it? Or kind of walk me through that a little bit more.
So if you look at the proteins, it's collagen, elastin. The carbohydrate, we use heparin, and it binds together to formulate a compressed particle. So these particles get injected in. So, think about a thermoplastic, but it's not plastic, so you don't have a reaction of the body, because that's how we got the human medical device designation, is when we injected into the human body, there was no reaction, no chemical response, no elevation of beta or T cells. So with that, once we inject it in, it mimics the cartilage and fluid that used to be there. But the beauty of it is, if you think about the components, that's the components of articulating cartilage in people and animals. So it integrates in perfectly to the host body, and you don't get any adverse events.
So you talked about kind of one of your strengths is just like understanding humans in general and people in general. So tell me about selling into markets as different as man's best friend, where it's almost like a fully like emotional buy, compared to say something like a horse, where there's actually like a monetary value that can be prescribed to the horse a little bit more, and it actually might be like an ROI type thing. How do you sell to those two different markets, and how do you market to them, and how do you figure that out?
So initially, for the first 2 years, we focus on athletic horses because it's easy to identify the benefits. The vets are on the track, so we get instant feedback. They have trainers that are able to report to the vet and back to us, as well as in racehorses, they actually show an improvement in earnings. We've had horses that show 10x what they earned before, relative to what they earned before after the spring injection. And so the uniqueness also is our particles or injection lasts typically about a year. Obviously, if you've got a harness racehorse, which they run every day, it's going to be less because it's just like cartilage. It wears, you wear it so you can do another injection. The good thing about it is we don't show any diminishing results after each injection, because and certain pharmaceuticals and everything, after each injection or so on, there's diminishing efficacy. So we were able to do extremely well to the point where there's an organization called HISA, Horse Integrity Safety Authority. They govern horse racing in the United States. In the rules they put out prohibiting synthetic lubricants and other types of lubricants. So basically, if you inject a racehorse with a polyacrylamide or a hydrogel, it's a 6-month prohibition from racing from the date of injection. They actually named Spring with the osteocushion technology as a product. If you use, it's only the standard 2-week prohibition. So in horse racing, basically anything you inject, you can't race the horse for 2 weeks instead of 6 months. 6 months is a long time. And so, and also if a vet on the track is using it, will be subject to fines and suspensions. But I've never seen a rule where they identify a product you can use outright, and they identified ours. So that was a nice windfall for us. I didn't expect to get something like that, but we did.
And then from there, I heard you mention in other interviews, so I would love for you to kind of elaborate a little bit more about just like how you go to, say, an animal or veterinarian conference, and people are pulling on your coat jacket saying, hey, love the product, but it actually does great for this, or it actually does great for that. Can you tell me a little bit more about kind of these findings that these veterinarians are having of, hey, actually has a lot more use cases?
Yep. So we put out safety studies. We had independent groups do safety studies and then do efficacy studies. And then lately, we've been pushing on the small animal market, which is significantly larger. So just in the United States, there's about 7 million horses, 83 million dogs, and about 50 million cats. So obviously the companion animal market's bigger, but we created a lot of data for the horses that it shows it works. And then now if you look at our most recent hires in the territorial or sales managers, they're small animal experts, or they've sold in small animals. Our vets that we're hiring as tech services vets or small animal vets instead of, top equine vets. So that allows us to present some of the studies at the various conferences to show. But the other good thing is a lot of veterinary doctors and owners of pets that have had great success, because the level of success they've been getting is sometimes pretty unbelievable. We had one veterinary school professor, she operated on the dog twice, and there wasn't any benefit. They injected it with Spring, and a week later, the owner came running into the university veterinary hospital, was filming how her dog was running like they never had an issue. And so they actually signed off, and we put the video up on Instagram with the owner and the school's permission. And we've been getting more and more of that on Instagram than LinkedIn, because we're getting so many cases out there that have done pretty remarkable recovery from the animals. So we're really helping improve the quality of life of the animals, as well as allowing the people to really enjoy their pets longer.
So say I have a dog with some sort of arthritis or joint pain. Do I go to my vet and just demand that they buy some Spring? Or how does that process work?
So we have done accreditation programs for continuing education for veterinary doctors to educate them. We have had key opinion leaders talk at major conferences. And basically now we have the top 6 distributors in the world covering our product. We recently picked those up, and we educate their salespeople to go out and sell. But we also have our supporting products. You got to keep in mind, to give you an example, MWI Animal Health is like the largest distributor in the world. Just in the United States, they do $5 billion a year in animal health distribution. For us to get their attention, they obviously saw the potential of our product, because they don't care about $1 million in sales. This is what we're doing, trailing 12. I believe, we're going to be hitting an inflection point where we're going to get much quicker adoption of the small animal side. So you can imagine picking up the top 6 where they're each doing multiple billions. They recognize what the potential this product has for the industry. And they go out and sell. There's major drivers from a macro standpoint and micro standpoint why the industry is growing. Pet care, right, or pet industry is right now about $320 billion a year. And by 2030, they're anticipating $510 billion. believe it or not, the key drivers of this is going to be artificial intelligence in their diagnostics of treatments for helping the veterinary doctors on identifying the proper protocol treatments, therefore extending the life of the animals. Also, as you extend the life of the animals, they could have more conditions as they get older, because we know 80% of dogs will develop osteoarthritis when they hit the age of 8, minimum. A lot of them develop it much earlier, but as a general rule of thumb, and the longer you live, that incremental cost goes way up. Also, by creating that scenario, you open up accessibility for people to own pets. So right now, 63% of households have pets. During the pandemic, we hit 70%. I do believe that trend will move back up to 66% of homes will have a home ownership. Now, also, I believe as healthcare costs for pets will be coming down. So within the last 5-6 years, we had 43 new veterinary schools open up. That's increasing the supply of veterinary doctors coming out into the field. So it is going to force that down. Also, pet insurance, that's growing at about 30% a year, and about
That's what I was going to bring up too, because pet insurance is kind of like mandatory now. When I was a kid, no one had pet insurance.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was wondering. Do you think the costs maybe go up though, because now they can push the costs on to someone else and say, hey, you deal with it, such like how whatever Obamacare happened kind of?
Yeah. No, so here's the general trend that's happening, okay? So right now about anywhere from 10 to 15% of pet owners have pet insurance. So you can see tremendous growth there. Now, the pet insurance companies are starting to get wise, recognizing the preventive care aspect. They're looking at technologies like ours to reduce the future costs of claims. So if you can bring a product like Spring in earlier on as a prophylactic on breeds of dogs like Labs, Dobermans, German Shepherds that have hip issues, and inject them much earlier on, you're going to push out any of the issues or elbows or knees where if they inject it, they may not need the surgery well beyond its life expectancy. And you're going to expect pets to increase their life expectancy because the average dog is about 13.7 years. That's a medium-sized dog. I expect at least a 10% increase, if not more. And, if you're looking at the little miniature Dachshunds, they actually have the longest life expectancy, which is like 15 years right now. So, the bigger the dog, the more likely they're going to have osteoarthritis because obesity is a major driver of joint issues. And believe it or not, during COVID, I really thought people were going to go out and exercise more and people were going to lose weight and their dogs were going to be extremely healthy. The exact opposite happened. People sat on their couch and their dogs sat on their couch with them watching TV the whole time and they gained weight.
Yeah. Eating their owner's snack food.
Yep.
So as we move forward, are there any other products kind of in the pipeline that Petvivo is working on besides Spring? And what are those?
So we just launched Precise PRP, which is the only FDA-reviewed product for safety in the PRP space. And it's a PRP that you don't have to draw blood. So there's a major advantage for veterinary doctors. Also, we guarantee a certain platelet count. It's extremely high, much higher than traditional methods. So for the veterinary doctor, it saves them time and money because you don't have to invest into a centrifuge, which is anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000. And then you got to take 20 to 30 minutes to draw the blood and spin in the centrifuge. And not knowing if you made an error in drawing the blood where you may not get the level of platelet count desired to have the results. So ours comes right in the vial. You just have to rehydrate, draw right out of the vial and inject. So it's a time consumption savings. It's a efficacy savings. So that's innovative where I feel it's next generation. We probably have at least 2 more products coming in the next 12 months, which we're pretty excited about, addressing different issues. And I'm not going to go into detail on those until we make the announcements. As you know, you're doing some of the studies to support it. You never know exactly the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to recruit dogs for the study.
So as we wrap up here, what kind of gets you excited and gets you out of bed? What do the next 5 years look like? What are you hoping to see where this business is in the next half decade or so?
So if you look at the U.S. market just for osteoarthritis and lameness, it's about $4.8 billion and growing at about 5.5% a year. We're providing a therapy that we're all excited that's going to improve the quality of life of our pets. If you look at our board of directors, you look at our management team, we're doing this because of the passion and love that we're helping animals and people. It's not purely saying, we're out here to make as much money as we can, because we're focused on the long term. We're not looking at today, next quarter. We're positioning this company to grab market share that's tangible.
Amazing. So if the audience wants to hear a little bit more and learn a little bit more about Petvivo and Spring with a Y, spelled with a Y for anybody listening, where should I send my audience?
So you can go to petvivoanimalhealth.com or just petvivo.com, and it'll link you into certain areas. You can also Google me on YouTube and stuff. I show up quite a bit on certain interviews because we have stories that people love, because 63% of households own pets, and anything that can help our quality of life for our pets, people want to learn. And so that's very powerful for us. Also, at the end of this month, we should be launching a pet AI platform where people can download, and it's in a partnership with Digital Learning. It's not ours. We don't have that kind of technology to develop the next generation of AI, but a person can download it and basically point the phone at their dog with the app, and it'll tell you what your dog's thinking and what it's trying to tell you. And then also, if you sign up for a subscription on a monthly basis, I think $9.99, it goes from 95% accurate to 98% accurate. Oh, wow. But it has many other functions. It'll allow us to convey our message to hopefully to a large population of dog owners that download the app when they see issues of lameness or osteoarthritis or any area of regenerative medicine that may help their pet. We'll be able to convey our message directly to pet owners.
Cool. I will link all those in the podcast description. John, thanks again for coming on the podcast. And for those of you still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
Thank you, Will.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement, therefore, by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast Express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in this podcast.